Albert Einstein, the war is won, the peace is not. Ladies and gentlemen, the Nobel anniversary celebration takes on a special significance this year. After our deadly struggles of many years, we are at peace again, or what we are supposed to consider as peace. And it bears a still more significance for the physicists who, in one way or another, were connected with the construction of the use of the atomic bomb. For these physicists find themselves in a position not unlike to that of Alfred Nobel himself. Alfred Nobel invented the most powerful explosive ever known up to his time, a means of destruction par excellence. In order to relieve his human conscience, he instituted his awards for the promotion of peace and for achievements of peace. Today, the physicists who participated in forging the most formidable and dangerous weapon of all time are harassed by an equal feeling of responsibility, not to say guilt. We cannot desist from warning. We cannot and should not slacken in our efforts to make the nations of the world, and especially their own government, aware of the unspeakable disaster they are certain to provoke unless they change their attitudes towards each other and towards the task of shaping the future. We hoped in creating this weapon in order to prevent the enemies of mankind from achieving it ahead of us, which, given the mentality of the Nazis, would have meant inconceivable destruction and the enslavement of the rest of the world. We delivered this weapon into the hands of the American and British people as trustees, as a whole of mankind, as fighters for peace and liberty. But so far, we failed to see any guarantee of peace. We do not see any guarantee of freedoms that were promised to the nations in the Atlantic Charter. The war is won, but the peace is not. The great powers united in fighting are now divided over a peace settlement. The world was promised freedom from fear, but in fact, fear has increased tremendously since the termination of the war. The world was promised freedom from want, but large parts of the world are faced with starvation, while others are living in abundance. The nations were promised liberation and justice, but we have witnessed, and are witnessing even now, the sad spectacle of liberating armies firing into populations who want their liberation and justice, and supporting in those countries, by force of arms, such parties and personalities as appear to be most suited to serve vested interests. Territorial questions and arguments of power still prevail over the common welfare and justice. Allow me to be more specific about just one case, the case of my own people, the Jewish people. As long as Nazi violence was unleashed only or mainly against the Jews, the rest of the world looked on passively, and even treaties and agreements were made with the potentially criminal government of the Third Reich. Later, when Hitler was on the point of taking over Romania and Hungary, at the time when Metternich and Auschwitz were in Allied hands, and the methods of the gas chambers were well known all over the world, all attempts to rescue the Romanian and Hungarian Jews came to naught, because the doors of Palestine were closed to Jewish immigrants, and no country could be found that would admit those forsaken people. They were left to perish like their brothers and sisters in the occupied country. We do not forget the heroic efforts of the small nations, of the Scandinavians, the Dutch, the Swiss nations, and of individuals in the occupied parts of Europe who did all in their power to protect Jewish lives. We do not forget the humane attitude of the Soviet Union, who was the only one among the big powers to open her doors to hundreds of thousands of Jews when Nazi armies were advancing in Poland. But after all that had happened, and was not prevented from happening, how is it today? While in Europe, territories are being distributed without any qualms about the wishes of the people concerned, the remainders of European Jewry are again denied access to their haven in Palestine and left to cold, to hunger, and persistent hostility. We shall never forget that these countries are on. We do not forget that these countries were being prosecuted throughout the concentration camps by the Allies, and this gives sufficient evidence of the hopefulness and shamefulness of the situation. It is sheer irony when the British foreign minister tells the poor lot of European Jews they should remain in Europe because their genius is needed there, and on the other hand advises them not to try to get at the head of the queue, lest they might inquire new hatred and persecution. Well, I'm afraid they cannot help it. With their 6 million dead, they have been pushed at the head of the queue of Nazi victims, most against their will. As far as we, the physicists, are concerned, we are no politicians, and it has never been our wish to meddle into politics. But we know some things that the politicians do not know, and we feel the duty to speak up and remind those responsible that there is no escape into easy comfort. There is no distance ahead for proceeding little by little. And there is no time for petty bargaining. The situation calls for a courageous effort. As the spirits that prompted Alfred Nobel to create this great institution prevail over those upon whose decisions our destiny rests. Otherwise, civilization will be doomed. Thank you.